What if I told you that something completely unexpected has just happened on the Crimea front? Something that military experts were not openly predicting, something that could quietly reshape the entire balance of the Ukraine war. For months, the world believed the Crimea region was one of the most heavily protected and untouchable territories under Russian control. It was described as a fortress, a red line, a symbol of power that could not be challenged without triggering massive consequences. And yet, recent developments suggest that Ukraine has made a move so calculated, so bold, and so strategically timed that it has sent shockwaves through military circles across the globe. This was not a loud announcement. There was no dramatic declaration at first. Instead, small pieces of information began appearing: reports of unusual military activity, satellite images showing changes near key installations, and sudden disruptions that raised serious questions. Analysts started connecting the dots, and when they did, one thing became clear: Ukraine was no longer just defending or reacting. It was shaping the battlefield in ways that few expected, especially on the Crimea front. To understand why this moment matters so much, we need to go back and understand what Crimea truly represents in this conflict. Crimea is not just a piece of land. It is a strategic hub, a psychological symbol, and a logistical backbone. Since its annexation in 2014, Russia has invested heavily in turning Crimea into a military stronghold. Air bases, naval facilities, missile systems, radar stations, and supply routes were all built or expanded with one goal in mind: to make Crimea untouchable. For Russia, Crimea is proof of power and permanence. Losing control or even appearing vulnerable, there would be more than a military setback. It would be a political and symbolic disaster. That is why, for a long time, many believed Ukraine would avoid directly challenging Crimea. The risks seemed too high, the defenses too strong, the consequences too unpredictable. But wars evolve, and so do strategies. Over the past year, Ukraine has been quietly transforming the way it fights. Instead of relying solely on large-scale offensives, it has increasingly focused on precision, intelligence, and timing. The goal has shifted from capturing territory at any cost to weakening the enemy's ability to sustain control. This change in approach is especially visible in how Ukraine has dealt with Crimea. The unexpected news from the Crimea front is not about a single massive attack. It is about a series of calculated actions that together form a much larger picture. Reports suggest that Ukraine has successfully targeted key logistical points, disrupted air defense systems, and forced Russian forces to spread their resources thinner than ever before. Each move on its own might seem limited. Together, they represent a strategic pressure campaign. One of the most surprising aspects of this development is how Ukraine managed to challenge Crimea's airspace. For years, Russian air defenses in the region were considered nearly impenetrable. Advanced missile systems, layered radar coverage, and constant patrols created the image of total control. But recent incidents indicate that this control is no longer absolute. Drones and long-range strike capabilities have played a critical role. Ukraine has invested heavily in developing and adapting these tools, often using a mix of domestic innovation and Western support. These systems are not just weapons, they are messages. Every successful strike or penetration sends a clear signal: no place is completely safe anymore. This has forced Russia into a difficult position. To protect Crimea, it must allocate more air defense assets, more personnel, and more resources. But doing so weakens other fronts. It becomes a strategic dilemma: defend everything and risk being stretched too thin, or prioritize and accept vulnerabilities. What makes Ukraine Ukraine's move even more bold is the timing. This did not happen randomly. It came at a moment when global attention was divided, when many assumed the conflict had reached a stalemate. By acting now, Ukraine shifted the narrative. Suddenly, Crimea is back in focus, not as an untouchable fortress, but as a contested space. The psychological impact of this cannot be overstated. Wars are fought not only on the battlefield, but also in the minds of soldiers, leaders, and civilians. When a region believed to be completely secure starts showing cracks, morale changes, confidence erodes. Doubt creeps in. For Russian forces stationed in Crimea, this means living under constant uncertainty. The idea of safety behind strong defenses is replaced by the fear of unexpected strikes. For Ukrainian forces, it represents proof that long-term pressure can produce results. Internationally, these developments are being watched very closely. Military analysts from NATO countries, Asia, and the Middle East are studying every detail. The methods used, the targets chosen, and the responses triggered all provide valuable insights into modern warfare. Ukraine is effectively turning Crimea into a testing ground for new strategies. Another critical element of this bold move is information warfare. Ukraine has been careful about what it reveals and what it keeps silent. Some successes are openly acknowledged, while others are left deliberately vague. This ambiguity itself is a weapon. It keeps the opponent guessing, unsure of what Ukraine is capable of and what might come next. At the same time, Ukraine's leadership understands the importance of controlling the narrative. The message being sent is not reckless aggression, but determination and capability. The world is being shown that Ukraine is not just surviving, it is adapting, learning, and striking with purpose. Of course, this move also carries serious risks. Any escalation involving Crimea could provoke a strong response. Russia may choose to increase military activity, tighten control, or even attempt to retaliate in unpredictable ways. Ukraine is fully aware of these risks, which is why the strategy appears measured rather than impulsive. The boldness lies not in recklessness, but in confidence. Confidence built on intelligence, preparation, and international support. Ukraine is signaling that it believes it can manage the consequences of its actions, or at least that the potential gains outweigh the risks. Another important factor to consider is logistics. Crimea has been a key supply hub for Russian operations in southern Ukraine. By targeting infrastructure connected to Crimea, Ukraine is indirectly affecting multiple fronts. Supply lines become less reliable, maintenance becomes harder, and operational tempo slows down. Even small disruptions can have large effects over time. A delayed shipment, a damaged facility, or a temporarily disabled base can ripple through the entire system. This is the essence of Ukraine's approach: cumulative pressure rather than immediate collapse. Civilians in and around Crimea are also affected by this shift. Increased military activity means more restrictions, more surveillance, and more uncertainty. This adds another layer of complexity, as public sentiment and stability become factors that military planners must consider. The unexpected nature of this news has also reignited debates among global policymakers. How far should support for Ukraine go? What are the limits? Is Crimea now an active battlefield again in a way it hasn't been for years? These questions do not have easy answers, but Ukraine's actions have forced them back into the spotlight. From a historical perspective, Crimea has always been a focal point of power struggles. Its geography makes it valuable, and its symbolism makes it sensitive. Any shift in control or influence there echoes far beyond the region itself. Ukraine's bold move taps directly into this historical weight. What we are witnessing is not the end of a story, but the beginning of a new chapter. The Crimea front is no longer static. It is dynamic, contested, and unpredictable. This changes calculations on all sides. For Ukraine, this is a statement of intent. It is saying that no territory is off the table, no challenge is impossible, and no assumption should go unquestioned. For Russia, it is a warning that past advantages cannot be taken for granted. As the situation continues to develop, one thing is certain: the world will be watching closely. Every move, every response, every silence will be analyzed. The unexpected news from the Crimea front is not just about what has already happened, but about what it suggests is possible. In modern warfare, perception can be as powerful as firepower. By challenging the idea of Crimea as an untouchable stronghold, Ukraine has altered perceptions in a fundamental way. This alone is a strategic victory. The bold move explained here is not a single action, but a mindset shift. A willingness to challenge, to pressure, and to redefine what is possible. Whether this approach will lead to a decisive outcome remains to be seen, but it has already changed the conversation. And perhaps that is the most important takeaway of all. In a war where many believed the lines were fixed and the future predictable, Ukraine has once again proven that surprises are still very much possible. The Crimea front, once thought to be quiet and secure, has become a stage for unexpected developments that could shape the course of the conflict in ways no one can afford to ignore.